live webinar. Today's topic is security in a mobile-first world. And Neil Butler, our Director of Sales Engineering, will be presenting. Before Neil gets us going, I just want to let you know that you can download the slides for this if you'd like to access those. Those are in the handouts area. And we're able to take questions at any time. You can type those in. Of course, we'll save them for the Q&A time at the end of the webinar. And we are recording, so look for a follow-up email from us later today, which will include the slides again, as well as the recording. And with that, I'll let Neil take it away.
Thank you, Ann. I'm always suspicious that probably no one's going to call in and listen to it again. But I guess it's good to have it so they can pass it around to other people. So thank you, everybody, for coming. This is a kind of an interesting new webinar we're doing. You'll see some material. Some of you have attended the webinars in the past. It looks familiar, but we're focusing on mobility a lot in the last couple of software releases. And there's reasons for that, of course, and you all know them because you're a mobile workforce, and we all know the challenges of supporting mobility. So what we're going to talk about today is kind of some of the things we do to support a mobile workforce, some of the new things we do, some of the things we've had for a while, but also how we discuss supporting mobile workers, because there's a lot changing, and it's always been a fairly volatile industry, but in the last year or so, the change rate is definitely picking up. And there's all these trends that you take your core functionality you have to give your users, and you filter it through all the trends, and those trends are affecting your budgets and where you're allocating resources. And the end result there, of course, is you need to make sure that everybody gets taken care of, and that includes the mobile workers. We used to design everything for people working in-house, and then maybe in the next release we'd hear from the mobile workers and add something. And that's not really our focus anymore. We really tend to look more at work group types and focus our development efforts there. And if you look at the influencers here, Skype for Business is certainly a big one. A lot of people are interested in that. A lot of people are starting to roll it out. It really is a game changer in the way communications works. It's adding some new functionality, but it's also limiting some ability to carry forth the old technology, and there's challenges there. And of course, that is a cloud product, if you care to choose it that way, and we have a cloud offering now. So definitely cloud is affecting everything that we do. And mobility is really the challenge for all of this, to make sure that the mobile workers can be effective and be efficient. Mobility is not a limited category like it used to be. Mobility now is basically, if I'm away from my primary desktop and I don't have all my tools, then I'm mobile. That might be down the hall in a conference room. That might be I'm out to lunch. That might be in the car driving to the airport. That might be on a week's business trip. All of those are important areas you need to make sure your employees can handle, because they're going to be in those scenarios. And then, of course, we're still, midway through the TDM to IP kind of conversion. There's a lot of things going on within the enterprise. So we just want to make sure, as you look at the things you're doing, that you kind of think of the mobility aspect of it as it goes along. And we always have a slide in here that just talks briefly about us. We've been doing this for a long time. Certainly, when we started, we were not worried about mobility in our first software release. Although our second software release did have dial-out pager notification. Maybe that was our first mobile feature, I guess. Although you might think of voicemail as mobility in the sense that if somebody's away from their desk, we take a message. So maybe we've been in mobility even longer than that. But we've been doing this a long time, and this is what we do. We don't have other application focus areas, so all of our people focus on this kind of communications and unified communications solution. We sort of look at things in a couple of different ways. This is a good way to look at where we spend our money, too, in terms of R&D. We spend a lot of money in interoperability because enterprises are complex. They have lots of different kinds of things that we need to connect to, and brands and various software levels. And we really want our product to work everywhere. That just makes it easier, not only to sell it, of course, the first time, but easier on the customer as they move forward in terms of if they buy our product on a legacy system today, it's good to know that if they move towards perhaps a cloud product or an on-site IP product, our product stays right there with it. We certainly have a voice practice with automated attendant and messaging. We don't spend a lot of time with messaging because messaging has been around long enough where, at least from the desktop workers' point of view, we've got that pretty much nailed down. Although as we start looking at the cloud, there's some changes there, of course, we have to pay attention to. And then, like I say, mobility is a big piece, and we'll look at that throughout some of the rest of this presentation. And then we always have kind of our extra group that sits over there doing professional services that responds to unique customer requests. Probably 1 out of 2 of our large enterprise customers ends up with some kind of custom installation or custom software. And some of them are a big part of what they buy it for, and some are just little things that they find out we can do along the way. So one of these days we'll have to get serious about having some webinars on the business process piece just to get people understanding what they should be looking at. But certainly, one of our goals in this quarter is to accelerate the customer's mobile first strategy. Mobile first is just our way of recognizing that where it used to be 80% of the people worked at the desk and 20% were mobile, it's pretty much flipped. 20% of the people are at the desk all the time and 80% are mobile some portion of their day or some amount. And so we want to really make sure that everybody understands we're focusing on those mobile people. Of course, one of the biggest things we did for mobile people was create a mobile client. As everybody knows, the proliferation of smartphones, mobile devices, iPads, Android tablets, everybody in the business world and mostly in the personal world is carrying at least one of these. I do find it amusing sometimes when I go into a large enterprise and perhaps we're meeting with the IT department and someone sits down and puts down 3 mobile devices that they just carry around with them all the time. And that's becoming more and more common. These are the tools that let us be untethered from the desk and still connected. And so, of course, we have our application. Our application runs on Android or iOS devices, and it does a really good job of separating out so the business communications piece runs in one way and the personal is different. And that's an important piece if you're still doing bring your own device type of device management. And of course, people say, well, you're a voicemail company, so let me guess, your mobile client does messaging. Yes, it does. It does it extremely well. It does it better than anyone else. It does it with a level of security that no one else can match. The devices don't actually store the messages on the phone. They play them and then discard them. So if you leave the phone around, there's nothing on it. But it does a lot more than just do messaging. And we have several mobile device webinars that you can attend when we talk about the kind of things we do. But this mobile device really becomes a key element in our deciding how we're going to manage this account. So the mobile device tells us something about where their location is, and the mobile device lets them control what kind of devices they're using at any given time, so they can be more efficient and be easier to reach in terms of what devices they have. Our mobile client does not require anything new, anything extra. It's a software license, and then there's a small server component that gets installed on the customer's web server. We don't require a new web server, not on our system or not anywhere else. So it's very easy to roll out, and once it's rolled out, it's very easy to use. The mobile client enhancements in this release actually come in 2 areas, but before the enhancements comes kind of the good news. If we're saying, well, mobile first, most people are working mobile at least part of the time. For years we've said, voicemail users aren't licensed. Why would we sell a voicemail and then charge you to put people on it? So our user licenses, are for special things, not for general things. And in recognition of the mobility piece, we now have changed. So to use the mobile device for messaging, while it used to require an individual user license, a personal assistant license, it no longer does. Now, anyone that has a mailbox on CXE with no additional charge, if the administrator sets them up, they can go out and download one of the mobile device clients and have all the messaging and mailbox control features at their fingertips to use. The second piece we added that's kind of this is something where the more we talk to IT people, the deeper into the applications they wanted to go. So a couple of years ago, they gave us a lot of feedback so we could handle what we did with messages, how well we protected messages, because they were concerned about that. We took care of that about a year ago in a release. And now the thing that they've been talking to us for the last year about is the fact that we used to store the user's credentials on the phone. In other words, when you downloaded the client and went to log in, it would ask you for your mailbox number and your password. It would only ask you the first time you logged in, and it would cache those. So from the mobile device, the app was easy to use. You just hit the little icon, the app would open up. You didn't have to log in every time. But some people pointed out that that's actually a little bit of a security risk because that's their same credentials for their mailbox in general. So technically, somebody could, cold room a device, take a device and open it up and get to the storage technology inside and find those credentials. Well, that would be fairly hard to do, but that would then give them credentials for that user. So to get around that, we use the technology that pretty much everybody uses for these type of things. When you log in the first time, it asks for your credentials. It creates a security token on the device. It passes a copy of that token to CX, and it erases the user's credential from the device. Now, every time they log in, the credential token is passed, but if somebody gets a hold of the token, there's nothing else they can do with it. They can't use that token to get into the mailbox. So we've set that up now as an option where you can configure the user has to reauthorize with their credentials anywhere from once a year to every single day. So it's just up to you how you want to roll that out. And as long as we were doing some work in there, we changed the reply all functionality from the mobile client. And the mobile client before, no matter how many people received a copy of a single message, they would reply to the sender only. And now from the mobile client, we do a reply all. We don't do a reply all from most of the telephone user interfaces, only from the Audix TUI, but from the mobile client now, everybody has the reply all functionality. If you kind of look at the new licensing model, without any license at all, you can create a mailbox and they can download the mobile client and they will get our messaging piece and they will get mailbox settings, greetings, they can manage their distribution list. They have all those other functionalities that make it easy for them to manage their account, plus messaging. You would still need the mobile client license for the advanced personal assistant features, the call screening, the find me, follow me, some of the contacts dialing, and the calendar integration things, pieces like that. One of the very popular ones, probably the most popular feature for people who spend any time in meetings, is the silent call screening option. So you can sit in a meeting and somebody calls you and you'll get a silent pop-up on your device. It'll show you who's calling, and you have a lot of options in terms of what you do with that device, that call. You can send it to voicemail. You can say take the call, step out of the room, answer the call. You can transfer it to another device for fixed mobile convergence. You can transfer it to another person. Or you could record an announcement. You could hit a button and say, yeah, John, listen, I'm going to be in a meeting for about 20 minutes, and I'll call you when I get out of the meeting. And a copy of that message, by the way, goes into your mailbox to remind you. But the most popular thing in meetings, of course, is to use the silent acknowledge, where you can pick one of those buttons, hit that button, go back to your meeting. There's been no interruption in the meeting, and the caller would hear, Neil Butler was unable to take your call, but we'll call you in 15 minutes. So silent triage of calls in meetings, just like we kind of all do silent voice or email triage. So all of this messaging we do these days is secure. Security is such a big piece of what everybody's really worried about. So the messages we have from the mobile device, they're not stored. They can't be forwarded off-site to an email system. There's no file attachment save. It's actually using, they download a copy of the audio and play it, and as soon as you leave that message screen, it gets deleted. Likewise with Web Phone Manager, our user web client, the messages are streamed down and they can play them, but they can't save them. So highly secure messaging for mobile people, and that's kind of a key thing that IT departments are looking for. Every now and then, we hear the, voicemail's dead story. I'm pretty comfortable that as long as people want to yell at other people, there'll always be voicemail. There's communications that are just better with voice. That is not to say that email has not eaten up a good part of the voicemail market, just like instant messaging has already eaten up a good part of the email market, and just like some of the other social apps are eating up some of the instant messaging market. Things will change, but you'll always be wanting to talk to somebody for certain instances. A survey run at the end of last year showed that internally, within the building, employee to employee, email is the preferred choice now. It's just so easy to type that message, put all that content in, get it off your plate, and go back, and you have control of that situation. The second most important choice is phone, and that usually comes because the content of what you want to have in a conversation is going to be very interactive. I ask you a question, you tell me something, I tell you something, where it might take 20 email exchanges and you can do it in a 30-second phone call. But interestingly enough, externally, that same survey shows that phone is still the easiest and most preferred way to talk to another employee or a customer. And that, I guess, makes perfect sense, because if you're talking about something externally, you don't really understand what their circumstances are, and the first thing you're going to do is try and catch them. So we're pretty comfortable that messaging continues to be an important part of what goes on. We're completely comfortable with the concept that routing incoming calls effectively is every bit as important as taking messages, maybe more important. Somewhere in the neighborhood of 26% of calls into an enterprise get completed on the first call, which means there's a lot of messaging, there's a lot of phone tag, and if you can improve those numbers, you've improved a lot of things, certainly employee productivity, customer satisfaction as well. So we spend a lot of time with our advanced call routing features to make sure that we can complete more calls. Now, when we used to first talk about this, people would tell us, well, somebody's going to call me, and I'm either at my phone or I'm not, and there's really nothing you can do about that. And then some people had applications in the early days where the user could forward their phone every time they went anywhere, forward it to their mobile phone when they went out, forward it to their home phone when they were working there. And those apps actually worked very well, but people didn't. People weren't really willing to do that. Our call completion technology is different. It uses something called context, meaning we don't expect much of the user, and therefore we're rarely disappointed. But what we do expect is the user has habits that we can take advantage of, and one of those is the calendar. Most business people, certainly mobile people, live and die by their calendar. That calendar is probably pretty accurate. We run our life by it, and we go in and look every single day to see what our life looks like. So we can use that calendar information to know how to effectively handle calls. So if a call comes in and I have a user with a personal assistant license, I can set them up such that the first thing the system does is look at their calendar. And let's say they're in a meeting. Well, they can have a special rule that says when I'm in a meeting, play a special greeting to the caller. Hi, Neil Butler is in a meeting and will not be available till 1 p.m. And then handle my call in a special way. That special way could be, of course, a voice message, which a lot of people would do. But also for that user that has our mobile client, like we saw a few slides ago, it might also be give the person in the meeting a chance, if they want to screen that call, give them that chance before you send it to voicemail. We do the same thing with Skype and Link present status. We can build rules based on that present status that basically handles what we're going to do with the call and what kind of greeting we're going to play. We have our own schedule as well. You'd be surprised how many systems, when they're set up for, let's say, a speech automated attendant, it's going to transfer to that number 24 hours a day. 24 hours a day. Now, that's fine if you go to work and you go in at 8 and you leave at 5 and that's the only place the number is ringing. You won't notice that as a problem. If somebody calls you late at night, it'll simply ring a couple of times and go to your voicemail. But if you happen to cover multiple time zones like I do, and you're dealing with a lot of people in Europe, they tend to call you at 3 in the morning. They know you're not there, but they just assume they'll call you, it'll forward to voicemail. Well, if you happen to be somebody that sleeps with their phone next to their bed, that's kind of a bit of an interruption. So one of the things we offer in context is a schedule, a daily schedule that says by every hour of the day, where do you want these calls to go? Do you want them to go to voicemail? You want them to go to your mobile phone? You want them to go to your home phone? The schedule all on its own does quite a bit to help call routing. But the most impressive piece we have, the piece that I think gives the biggest boost in call completion, is our mobile client location feature. Now, despite what people say sometimes, we do not know where you are. Our app doesn't know, because you have our mobile client, where you are at any given time. But what it does allow you to do as a user is create locations that you define and give us access to that we can ask if you're at that location. So for me, I have a call schedule that says 7 days a week from 6 in the morning to 7 at night. If calls come in, go ahead and send them to me. Follow whatever rules there are. And my basic rule set says, first ring my desk phone, then ring my home phone, and then ring my mobile phone. If a call comes in and it says, okay, I'm going to ring at the desk phone, it has permission to ping my mobile client, because I've built and defined a location called at work, and it can ask me, is this person at that location? And then when it comes back no, well, why is it going to bother to ring the phone? It'll say, well, the next call is at home. He's also built a home location, Is he at home? Yes, he is. So it'll go ahead and send the call to my home business number. So that kind of call routing, we're going to see in another slide, covers 90% of people's circumstances and just does wonderful things for call completion. We can use the calendar, as I said, for Exchange, Office 365, and Google. And currently the only instant messaging product that is working with the product is Skype for Business or Link. So those are the kind of pieces for our presence. Now, if we look at a normal user, and I'm talking, remember, we're talking mobile users. A normal mobile user is probably 90% of their time is three circumstances. They're working from their desk, they're working in the building, maybe in a conference room, or they're truly mobile, which means they can be anywhere. Just that single set of rules that I showed you that I built, or even a more simple one that says, if I'm in the office, ring my desk phone. If I'm not, ring my mobile phone. Even just that simple two-step rule will increase call completion dramatically. So one of the things we like to discuss with customers is, the advantage of completing more calls, taking the latency out of those human transactions and giving, your customers, if they don't get you, better feedback. Neil Butler is working from home. Neil Butler is in a meeting. There's all these statuses that we can take advantage of, both to route calls and to inform the callers what's going on. Probably the next biggest piece we give a mobile user is our speech interface. I always like talking to customers about this because most customers' speech interfaces are new, and they've maybe heard a few other ones, and they're not really expecting much. But ours is not new. Ours is, I think, about 15 years old now, something like that. If we went back to the first version of it, we've been adding consistently to it. We've been tuning the grammars. We have become true experts in a speech interface. And our speech interface basically eliminates the need to touch the phone. I climb in my car every morning. I head out of my driveway. First thing I do is hit my Bluetooth speakerphone. The system comes back and says, "Hello, Neil Butler. What would you like to do?" At that point, I have basically all the capabilities I have from my desk. I can read my calendar, and that includes being able to make appointments as well as just list them. I can read my email, have my email read to me over the phone, access my voice messages, listen to any new fax messages, the header information, and forward them on so they'll be waiting for me at work. I can make calls to contacts, not just internal people, but anybody that's in my contacts. And I can change my availability status on the fly. I can do all the things I would do in that first 20 minutes when I got to work, that first triage session that we do. I can do it in my car. And then all day long, when I'm driving, I'm in my system, I'm sending messages, I'm receiving messages. I might be in the middle of listening to an email and someone would call me and it would say, "You have a call from John Tyler." Say accept, reject, or acknowledge. I have those same kind of features like I have from my mobile client, but this is all voice driven, so it's eyes free, hands free. So I say accept the call, and now I'm talking to somebody and they say, "Yeah, what I'd like to do is have a meeting today with you and the customer we were talking about at 2 o'clock. Can you set that up?" "Sure, no problem." That person hangs up. I'm still in my system, and I say, "Create a new meeting today at 2 o'clock for 2 hours. Who do you want to invite?" "Mark Reed," that's the person that just called me. "Anyone else?" "John Tyler," that's the person from my contacts. Now a meeting is set up in my calendar, and meeting announcements go out to both those people. Obviously the contact person gets an email, whereas a normal meeting request goes out to the person that's also on my system. So what you get with a speech user interface is the conversion of a lot of unproductive time into productive time. And that's a nice goal to be able to hit, because keeping people productive is what communication software is all about. We always talk a little bit about unified messaging for mobile people. It certainly started for people at their desks so they could get their email messages and voicemail messages in one client. But as mobility became a bigger challenge, getting all these messages out to mobile people became a part of the UM challenge as well. We've been doing it longer than anyone else. We have every type there is. I don't think there's anything in the UM world we don't do. There's a lot of things we do better, more efficiently than anyone else does. And throughout all of it, there's a security focus for us. How we do messaging, where we store messages. I'm supporting TLS and HTTPS for their web clients. Everything we do in messaging has been thought through as much as we can from a security point of view. There's actually kind of 4 ways that people look at unified messaging, and it has to do with what you're going to do with the messages once you have them. kind of the original best kind of functionality in terms of for a mobile person is what's called server-based, which means we put the messages in the email server. Now, some people don't want to do that, and we understand that. We have other ways to get around that. But for those that do, CX would take a message, it would put it in the email server, and then basically the user would handle those messages from one of their email clients. They can still call in over the phone. When they do, they can get to their voicemail and their email, but from all their email clients. So from their desktop Outlook or Notes client, from their mobile client, their mobile email clients, all of those will leverage, we'll leverage that infrastructure. So for mobile people, that's the best. But there are industries and there are departments where having a voice message in email brings up discoverability, compliance, and confidentiality issues. So there are people that don't want to do that. So we'll look in a couple of slides for how we handle those people. This used to be server-based unified messaging, very easy to do. Of course, it's gotten a little more complex because of one of those challenges we talked about earlier, and that's the cloud. The cloud is one of the first products that's kind of, or one of the first locations where people are actually looking at putting their groupware. The success of Gmail originally and now Office 365 is pretty high, and there's a lot to offer there. So from our point of view, we do the same kind of server-based messaging. It doesn't matter to us that it's in the cloud. That's just a different IP address and a different protocol. One of our engineers has a shirt that says the cloud is just somebody else's computer, and that's how we treat it. As long as you have an account on Office 365 or Gmail, we can put those messages up there the same exact way. For a long time, what people wanted was to get the messages in their email client, but leave them on the voicemail server. And we do that. It's less popular today because it still has the same risks. Even though it's stored on CX, if it's in the email client, people can forward it out of the system. So from a confidentiality and compliance, that didn't seem to be very popular. So not a lot of people do this today, but it is still in the product, and there are some times when people want to use it. Probably the one that's become the most popular is what we call secure unified messaging, which is really just web unified messaging. That client I talked about, Web Phone Manager, it's a free user client, and it can see the messages that are in the CX system. So you simply take your user, create a voice mailbox for them, no charge for that, load the Web Phone Manager client, no charge from that, and they now have the ability to get to their messages from that client. And as we discussed earlier, we stream those messages so they can get them from the client, play them over the phone, play them over the speakers, but they can't get them out of the system. There's no file attachment save or cache copy that they can get their hands on. And there's no charge for this, no user license at all. So this is a kind of a free version of unified messaging. And then the last one is simplified unified messaging, which is really just our message notification. We have a very powerful notification engine that when we send out an email to somebody saying, hey, you have a new voice message, we can actually include a copy of that message. So this is the only version that ends up with 2 copies of the message that have to be maintained separately. But it's very easy to deploy. There's no charge for it. This gets used sometimes for contractors. People want to give them an email account, but you might want to be able to send them voicemails. So this is more of an application tool than anything else. So from a mobility point of view, from call routing to find those pesky traveling mobile users, to unified messaging to set up their messages, to a speech interface to make them more productive, to our advanced call routing to complete more of those incoming calls, we've got most of it covered. It's, like I say, a primary focus, and we'll continue doing that, and you'll see more and more mobility pieces as newer versions of our product come out. And that takes us here.
Okay, thanks, Neil. All right, so we do have a few questions in. If you'd like to submit a question and you haven't done so already, you can see the question box. If you unminimize, if you use that orange arrow in your upper corner of the panel, then you'll expand and you'll be able to see where you can put through the question. And the handouts area also has the slides if you want to download those. Neil, the first question, does the mobile app call screening, is the mobile app call screening available for all mobile client users, or does that require a personal assistant license?
The call screening piece is part of the personal availability features. That stays only with the licensed version. What you really get with the unlicensed version is access to messages and mailbox settings. Everything else still requires a personal assistant license.
Okay, thanks. Next question, can you clarify, does the admin need to disable or password reset a mailbox when a user loses their cell phone?
There's a number of choices. If you have this new version, we can, the administrator can go in and deactivate that security token that we talked about, and that phone becomes useless. But even in our older versions, it would have been very easy for the administrator to simply go into that user's mailbox and turn off the mobile link, and messages would be unavailable as well. So old or new, it's very easy for the admin to do that.
Okay, another question. Do you support Google Calendar integration for call completion?
Yes. So for call routing, the calendar is one of the pieces we do. My hesitation was there because while we can read the calendar even, so as a Google Calendar user you can say, what are my appointments for next Friday? We can't create new appointments. But the call routing, saying if I'm in a meeting I want to change where my calls go, that is tied to Google Calendar as well.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Neil. Actually, it looks like that wraps up the questions. Obviously, you covered everything in such detail that it left no one, or very few people, with a follow-on question. So just want to thank everyone for joining. Once again, we will send out a follow-up email today with a link to download the slides as well as a link to the recording in case you got interrupted or you'd like to forward to a colleague who might be interested in watching this. And certainly look for future webinar invites from us. I think we have one or two more coming up this month. So look for those invites if you're interested in some other content that we'll be presenting. And then I will also let Neil close us up.
Thank you. So when Ann says we have more webinars coming, the whole purpose for these webinars is for us to give you information you find helpful. So letting us know if we're doing that is very important, but also, is there anything else about our product or our place in the industry where you think a webinar would be good? We are always open for that kind of information. And you can get to us at info@avst.com. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Have a great day.
To learn more about AVST, please visit www.avst.com.